Just because I poke fun at the stories I read and or fan art featured in my videos doesn't mean that anyone should harass the creators of anything featured in this show. Cyberbullying is a serious issue that damages people emotionally and psychologically, sometimes to the point of self-harm and or suicide. Please keep any and all criticism constructive and reasonable for all parties involved. Thank you. Hey guys, what is up? This is Guthguy bringing you episode 15 of the Crappypasta Show. In today's episode, I'll be reading a story called MLP, No Hope Left, a pony pasta about a zombie apocalypse within Equestria. You know, that should be interesting to say the least. I mean, where else would you find a pony pasta about a zombie apocalypse? Just saying. But in all seriousness, let's start the show, guys. Darkness cast upon the little village known only as Ponyville, a place of happiness, magic, and true friendship. It was late at night, and not even the sound of an owl could be heard, all but the soft coughing sound in the distance. Cough, cough. It slowly grew louder and louder, more violent and sickening. Somewhere in the cool of the night, while all of Equestrian slept peacefully, was poor little Fluttershy, the yellow little filly with long, cascading pink hair curled up against the foundation of some stranger's house. Shaking violently, she curled up to keep herself warm, but she kept coughing and coughing without end. Each breath was a wheeze, and each wheeze seemed horrible hard, and there was something eerie about it. Poor Fluttershy lay against the ground, alone and afraid. A large bit mark was upon her rump, covering her cutie mark in blood. Her large eyes gazed upon the bite mark and thought back to that strange rabbit she had tried to help earlier. It was small and fluffy, almost like Angel. He even looked like Angel, but this rabbit seemed irritated by something, twitching and looking around wildly. Fluttershy approached that small, tiny little rabbit and spoke softly to it, but before she could finish her good morning, the rabbit leapt to its feet and took a chunk out of poor Fluttershy's soft yellow pelt. Now, alone and afraid, Fluttershy lay with her eyes slowly drifting down as a heavy sleep began to take over her. Something bitter and cold took over the poor pony. There was so much pain, as if all of her bones had been broken. Slowly, she closed her little eyes in the dead of night, wondering if this fever was going to end. Cough, cough. Once more, the little mare coughed, and then finally everything went quiet in the dead of the night. Not a howl from a wolf or a twit from a bird. All the mice seemed silent as well, not even daring to take a peek outside. A bitter breeze blew in from the south, and slowly the sun began to rise. And somewhere in the sky could be seen the soft white alicorn, Celestia, raising the sun up into the heavy sky, unaware of the danger that all of Equestrian was about to suffer from. The following day, yawning from her bed, Twilight Sparkle arose, gazing around with tired eyes puffy from last night's study. Spike wasn't around, which surprised Twilight, as the purple and green dragon was always lingering on to help Twilight with her daily chores, but today he was not here. So, Twilight got out of her bed and slowly walked down to the library area where she used her magic to prepare herself a nice hot cup of tea and hope she would get a little kick of energy out of it and be slightly revived. With the final drop of sugar, Twilight lifted the cup to her lips, but was suddenly distracted by a loud thud as the door to the library busted open. Dropping the cup of tea, Twilight jumped and trotted towards an exhausted Rainbow Dash. Something seemed off about her. The way she looked at Twilight was one with fear, but with hope as well. "Rainbow Dash?" Twilight softly spoke as she approached the Pegasus mare. "Twilight, you have to help. Something's wrong. Very, very wrong." Her voice came out with such fear and horror that Twilight knew she didn't need her cup of tea to help her wake up. "What happened, Rainbow? Tell me everything?" Twilight tried to gather the poor mare together, but Rainbow Dash was in such a frizzle she could hardly keep herself standing on one spot. "No time," the mare panicked as she began to drag her purple friend out of the library. "We have to go now, and I mean now." Rainbow Dash began to hover above the ground, her wings working so hard only to rip her off a few feet from the ground. Yes, something was up, that's all Twilight knew. But once she walked outside, she noticed there was hardly any pony out there. Normally on a bright and sunny day like today, the marketplace was filled with ponies from all over the place. Not even Pinkie Pie was seen bouncing around. Gazing from side to side, Twilight agreed that something was wrong, but was suddenly caught off guard by Rainbow's words. "Come on, follow me," cried Rainbow Dash, as she jetted off into the distance. Twilight looked up, watching her friend fly off in the distance. With a final glance around, Twilight followed after Rainbow Dash, finding it hard to keep up with the Pegasus pony. They passed all the old houses in Ponyville, past the hall, into the marketplace, and all the way up near the forest. And then they stopped at a wooden little house, a cottage cute in its own unique way. It was Fluttershy's house they stopped at. Rainbow Dash landed graceful and trotted towards the door slamming it open. "Rainbow, don't you think you should at least..." Suddenly Twilight was brought to a halt, her eyes widened with terror to the sheer shock of what was in front of her. Rainbow Dash looked at Twilight, in her eyes some sort of plead for hope or an explanation. Covering the walls, ceilings, and floor was a crimson liquid that held a metallic scent to it, dripping off the stained couch and dinner seat. Twilight stood in disbelief. Blood had filled the room, corpses of small animals, some beyond recognition, scattered all over the place. "And that's not all, Twilight." Rainbow again addressed the horrible situation once more into Twilight's paralyzed mind. "It's happening everywhere. Blood and sickness. Rary even started acting funny too." The Pegasus softly fluttered into the air, hovering like normal and pointing her right hoof around, talking on about something. But Twilight was lost in her mind. Her eyes dashed from one side of the room to the other, to the ceiling and to the floor. It was impossible to imagine that somebody had come here and slaughtered all these poor innocent animals. But where was Fluttershy? Suddenly Rainbow Dash flew off once again, but Twilight didn't pay attention. Backing up, she watched a dark shadow appear from a corner. There was a sound, like the sound of a tap dripping. Then suddenly Twilight came to see the figure's face. Empty dark eyes glared back at her. Her mouth was stitched up, and her once yellow, glorious wings seemed damaged. Dripping down her mouth was the crimson blood of those poor animals all around her. All Twilight could mutter was, "Fluttershy?" Then the monster-like pony came charging after her. Turning on her hinds, Twilight ran as fast as she could. Behind her, a monster Fluttershy growled and made unrecognizable sounds from behind. She was faster than before, and things didn't seem to be okay. Then out of the corner of the house alleyway, Twilight saw her purple dragon, but when his head turned in her direction, she watched the blood drip down his jaw, his teeth sharp and distraught, and his eyes emotionless and full of a darkness that covered the whole entire eye. Where had Rainbow Dash gone? Twilight thought to herself as she quickly avoided the beastly-like creatures. Suddenly there were more. There was Rarity. Her eyes the same, her mouth gaped open with blood of a freshly eaten corpse just before her hooves. Makeup trailed down her face as if she had been crying. Her hair was a mess, just like all the others, messy and rough-looking. In the purple mare's chest, she could feel the pain of her heart as it thumped against her flesh, screaming with fear. And from above, Twilight watched as a blue figure fell from the sky. It was Rainbow Dash. As the blue mare hit the hard, cold ground, there came a gasp of air, and suddenly her eyes rolled back into her head. A group of Pegasus flew down. Their wings looked wrecked, just like Fluttershy's. All their eyes held darkness full of empty souls. Then finally Twilight came to a conclusion as she herself ran out of breath. And knowing that she was about to hit the ground to be gouged out. Zombies? It was all the filly had time to speak before she felt hard against the rough ground. A burning sensation crossed her face as she began to cry out in pain. Suddenly more pain, and then finally, darkness. In the princess's castle. High up in the castle of Equestria, Celestia paced back and forth. Her eyes glared against the red carpet floor on the ground. Her colored mane dangled back and forth in the cool breeze passing through. A horrible scent came with it, as Celestia knew all too well what had just started to happen all around her, and to know that hurt her badly. There was nothing the Alicorn could do. Guards came rushing in. They took in long breaths, prepared to address the situation, but they were silenced by Celestia's glare. I already know. Luna is gone too, like the rest. A tear fell down her cheek as she too took in a deep breath, trying to clear her head. Twilight? She thought softly to herself alone in her mind, already knowing that the purple filly she had taken under her wing had already become much like the others, zombies, feasting upon others' flesh and spreading like a disease. How much longer do we have? Celestia asked, turning her back towards the three guards. Not long. We must leave right away. One guard said softly, still exhausted from whatever he had done before. Suddenly, one of the guards began to cough, blood splattering from his mouth. Oh no, you got bitten, didn't you? One guard called out. Celestia stood still, tears falling down her cheeks, unable to stop herself from crumbling down to the ground. The sounds of flesh ripping apart could be heard, and then Celestia felt the eyes glare upon her. She rose to her face, the monster-like creature. It was fast-moving and ripped at her throat, falling to the ground. Celestia felt her life seep away from her, knowing there was nothing she can do. Only hoping somebody out there had to have survived. Some pony must have survived. And then there was darkness. Yeah, sorry this narration is so late. Had a bit of... I guess I'm going through a bit of a depressive episode, and I guess YouTube was a little too all-consuming, so I'm probably going to be uploading a little less often. But as for the story I just read, I don't know if it was the writing or if I was simply a little bit out of practice, but for some reason I kept misreading a lot of the phrases. It was probably both, because I did notice that some phrases were a little bit awkwardly written. Not sure if I can give an example right now. Well, I can't really find an example right now, but what I can tell you is that there were some spots that had improper punctuation or awkward punctuation. Sometimes a couple of similar words are clustered together, which kind of makes it a bit hard to read. I'm not sure if you would see the same thing reading this story, but let's see. For example, a tear fell down her cheek as she too took in a deep breath, trying to clear her head. You notice how to and took are right next to each other. It could just be me nitpicking, but whatever. I think what brings this story down is the writing style. For example, in the beginning, It starts with a brief prologue of Fluttershy running away and getting sick and all that, and then suddenly flashing back to when she got attacked in the second paragraph, only to flash back down to the same scene in that exact same paragraph, which is really, really awkward. I mean, why can't you just start from the beginning? I mean, your flashback has to be a bit longer for it to be warranted, or at least refer to the character thinking about what just happened, not just not just switching between different points in the timeline like that. I think this and several other more subtle errors kind of what helped put the story into Crappypasta.com instead of Creepypasta.com because there are some genuinely good ideas. You know, a zombie apocalypse in Equestria does seem like a good prompt for a pony pasta if done right. But unfortunately, it just had too many flaws to really make it as a creepypasta. Like I said before, it does have some potential. Yeah, I'm botching my review, aren't I? Okay, let's turn away from that mess and get back to my usual ending thingy. Okay, I'm awkward. In the next episode, I will be reading 3 pastas: Scootaloo, Who's on the Menu, and Scissorman. As for my next upload, which I should be bringing up maybe in a week and a half or 2, I'm gonna give you an all new episode of my least popular series, Not Sheriff Troll. This is Gothcat signing out. Thank you and goodbye.